Okay, thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. My name is Maria Luisa Valle. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at NYU, and let me see. Here we go. So I'm the program director of outreach for Project Short, and I'm also a mentor for Project Short. And in this webinar, I will focus on the application to graduate school as international student. So I will talk about what are the main things to consider when you're choosing a PhD program, what are the requirements for international students, which are basically the language requirement like the test, the English test that you may be required to do, any country-specific requirements, and some option beside the PhD. I will not focus on the writing of a statement, CV, or letters. And as Sarah mentioned, we will have other webinars that will focus on this topic. So some info about me. I'm an international postdoc. I was an international student. I'm originally from Italy, and I did my undergrad and also my master's degree in Italy in biotechnologies. Then almost 10 years ago, I moved to Georgia, where I worked 2 years as a research assistant. In 2017, I started my PhD at University of Georgia, and I graduated in 2021. And since 2022, I'm currently a postdoctoral fellow at NYU working on Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so let's start. So what you should consider when you choose a PhD program? Well, the first thing that I suggest is to look at the program and look at the acceptance rate of international student. Oops, sorry about that. Now, this information is usually on the website of the program, and is going to help you to have an idea about the program, if there is a certain number, a certain percentage of international students that are allowed. And if it's not present, I would mail the graduate coordinator and ask them directly. The second thing are the language requirement. Now, if your first language is not English, and if you didn't do your undergrad in English, you may have to take the TOEFL or the IELTS test. And a good thing to do is to check the scores that each program required, because you need to be also aware of yourself. So it's always good to see what are the requirements scored and think if you can meet them or not. And the third thing is the scholarship. So you want to choose a program where you're going to be funded. And this can happen through a scholarship or through an assistantship available within the department. For example, during my PhD, the department where I was in, they grant an assistantship in terms of a research assistantship or teaching assistantship to all PhD students. So I was sure that the majority of the tuition were covered by the program. There may be cases in which you may have scholarship available from your country to study in the US. So it's also something else that I would advise you to check when you're applying for a PhD. And if you don't have access to this information, contact the program coordinator and ask them. Now, the other important thing is to look on the type of the program. Now, there are two main PhD programs that you can choose from. The first is just the regular program, meaning you just apply to one department and you apply to one program. Now, in this option, you already know what you want to do. If you're still undecided, which is totally normal, I would advise you to look into another type of PhD programs that are called umbrella program. Now, the main difference is that if you apply to an umbrella program and if you're admitted in the program, you can rotate into different departments. Now, the example that is on this slide is from the actual program that I attended, the PhD program in integrated life science at the University of Georgia. That is a type of an umbrella program. So if you got admitted to the program, you can rotate up to 15 departments. And this is really useful if you're still undecided about what you want to study. But in both cases, whether it's one department or different department, they usually require you to list one or two faculty. So just be aware that, even if you apply to an umbrella program, they are still going to ask you to just select one or two PI that you're interested in working with. Another important factor that international students, they usually don't really think about, and I also didn't think about that when I was a student, is, the city and the state, or, all those little things beside university and the research that you're going to do. So especially if you have never been to the US, you need to choose the city and the state where you want to go very wisely. So going to a big city like New York is going to be different whether staying in a smaller city. And this is going to affect you the general cost of living, like the rent, grocery, and everything's going to be different. But on the other way, a big city may give you more opportunities rather than a small town, right? So that's an important decision that you need to make. And this is also related to the transportation. I would say 90% of city in the US, you will need a car. Unless, for example, you're in New York or in a bigger city where you might have a pretty good public transportation. So this is another expenses, thing that you may need to think about whether you're comfortable in just driving around or you would rather choose like a town with a good public transportation. And also another important factor is the weather. Now, according to the states, US may have a very, very different weather. So it's also depending where you're from, you may want to think about how cold it gets or how hot it gets, and then make a decision about that. And this is particularly important because you're gonna stay there at least 5 years, I would say. And all those factors, they will affect your quality of life and your mental health. And I highly advise you to think about that outside, the work and the type of research. Also because remember that with a student visa, which is an F1, you will not be allowed to work. So think about all those factors. Now, regarding the language requirements, do you need to take the TOEFL or the IELTS? This is a very common question that mentees usually ask us as a mentor when they're international. So the easy answer is yes, if your first language is not English. Like in my case, I'm Italian, so all my degrees, the classes that I attended were in Italian, so I already knew that I would have to do an English test. But the situation gets more tricky if actually your undergrad was in English. And in that case, you need to contact the graduate school. So if this information is not clear enough, you need to talk to somebody, and that's very specific about the department. So you need to talk to the graduate coordinator and ask them directly about your situation. So both tests are very similar. I took both, and I would say the only difference is that the TOEFL has the speaking part like recorded. So all the tests would be on a computer, and the speaking part also will be in a computer as well. Instead, for the IELTS, the speaking part usually happens with a professor that's going to evaluate you. But regardless, they're very similar, and it really depends on the university what they ask you. My advice is to check the dates, check where those tests are available in your country, whether you're in the US or you're outside the US. And it is important because you have to schedule them. Now, I hope that by now all of you have scheduled or taken the TOEFL or the IELTS, because keep in mind that it's gonna take time, for the score to be sent to the universities. So I would advise you to take this test like in the next weeks before November for sure. Once you complete the test, they will ask you for a school code. So another important thing is to at least have in mind what universities you want to apply to when you take the test, because you will have the option to choose the school, and each school has a code. So there is another thing that you need to know. And as I mentioned before, each department and each university have their own rules regarding these English tests. So usually on their website, they're gonna tell you what's the score that they expect from the applicants to have. But you also need to be very careful and look at the score for each section, especially for the speaking, because some university may require you a certain level of English, because you may need you may become like a research assistant or teaching assistant. So they want to be sure that your speaking skills are at a very advanced level and you're able to communicate with the students. So be careful and check each score and check that your scores, they actually match the requirement of the universities you're applying to. And of course, don't wait until the last week, because it's gonna take time. Now, the last thing are the academic transcript and your diplomas that, as you know, you're required to send. Also, depending on the universities, they may ask you to send a official translation of your transcript and your diploma. In my case, they were in Italian, so I had to translate them in English. They usually require a non-official copy, so I wouldn't send the official transcript. There is usually the non-official copy, and usually it's your undergrad university that has to send them to the US school where you're applying to. And if the score system in your country is not GPA based, you may have to have your transcript evaluated and convert into GPA score by a credential evaluation service. For example, my transcript were not in GPA, so I had to have them converted and evaluated by an agency. And again, don't wait until the last week, especially for evaluation of transcript, because this requires at least 1 week and is a long process. So if you haven't done it yet, I highly recommend you to send them like as soon as you can, because you want to have all transcript delivered and received by the universities of your interest by the end of the application. So by the deadline, you don't only have to upload the statement and CV, but all your document must have been received by the graduate school. Now, what happens next? So after you apply to graduate school, and the deadline is usually beginning of December, you will receive a feedback for the interviews around December or January. Now, the interviews, they may be in person or maybe via Zoom, depending where you're located. If you're in the US, you may receive an invitation in person to the campus. And they're usually around February or March. By March or April, I would say, you should know if you are admitted to the program. And even if you are like on a wait list, which may happen, you should know the final answer by April, I would say. And in the summer, you will have to complete all your paperwork, schedule a visa appointment, get a student visa, and next year in August, you will start graduate school. So it's gonna be a long journey. And I want to conclude by mentioning that, some people they just want to do some additional experience before starting graduate school. That's what I did personally. Or, it may just happen that you don't get into any program. So one advice of something that you can do, before applying the next year is to look for position as research assistant or lab tech. This is very important because this type of experience is going to be useful for you in terms of skills that you can acquire. It's usually a 1 to 2 year contract depending on funding of your lab. You're trained and you're part of the staff. So you're no longer a student, but you work. You have all the benefit as every employee of your university. You're paid, your benefit, and you learn a lot. And depending on the lab, you may also be included into poster presentation, go to conference, be included in papers, depending on your contribution. So this is a very important thing that I would highly recommend you if it's something you would like to do. And the website that I listed here, one is mostly from Europe, it's called Euraxis, and the other, Nature Career, is for all over the world, and it's actually the website that I use to find my first job as a research assistant and my current postdoc job at NYU. So it's something that I would recommend you in case you're interested. And I want to conclude by sharing with you some useful links about Project Short. If you're not familiar with Project Short, we have an amazing website with plenty of resources for graduate school application. We have a Twitter or X account where we have, and also an Instagram account where we share resources as well, and also the event. As Sarah mentioned, all this presentation will be recorded on our YouTube channel. So if you miss some previous presentation, you can check our channel. And we also have a podcast on Spotify about graduate school, which you can also listen to. Those other links are other universities of program that they may help you at the moment, especially because right now the application for mentees for this cycle are closed. So if you need additional help, those are some example of universities and program that can help you and can assist you in your application. So that's all I wanted to say. And thank you for tuning in, for your attention. And now I'm here to answer your question. And I'm gonna stop sharing. So the first question that I'm gonna answer are the ones that were listed on the form that you to register, and the question that those people list were about scholarship for international students. So they ask, you know, if there are scholarship available and how can they support themselves if they want to do a PhD program in the US as international student. Now, as I mentioned, the first thing is to look at the university and department you're applying to, and you need to be sure that you're going to have a scholarship. If you don't have a scholarship, it can be in form of assistantship, which is a research assistantship or teaching assistantship. The difference is that if you are on a research assistantship, usually your PI will cover you the majority of your tuition, so you're gonna be working on the lab. If you're on a teaching assistantship, like I was during my PhD, you will be asked to join a professor in a class and assist them. Now, also this part may be tricky because depending on the program, you may be required to be in charge of a class, or you may be required to just assist a professor. So this is also an important thing that you want to be aware of, because, you know, helping a professor is different than being in charge of a class. Then there are also some other mentors that share with me that if you feel you're very competitive, you can look for private funding for private agencies that allow international students to apply. But for most of cases, if you're looking for like a travel grant, a small grant, it might be you can apply to them, for example, for conference. For example, just been to the Society for Neuroscience conference, and they have some travel grants from students. They're usually open to students from all around the world. So if you're attending a conference that is like an international conference, you may still be eligible to apply to those grants. And another source that was mentioned to me by other mentor was the Fulbright program. But for the Fulbright, you may check the amount of staying, because it may be limited to few years. And I'm gonna, go and read your message. Okay. Yes, so yeah, Sarah, answer about the transcript. Although I actually, for one application, it was actually required for the transcript to be delivered by mail in Georgia, which was the only case. And I had to ask my university in Italy to do that. It's very rare, but usually if it's a small university, they may ask you that. So it's always a good thing to check in advance. A research assistant employee usually able. If you, oh, you mean if you work as a tech? Yes, like when I work as a research assistant, I got a J1 visa. So if in the case in which you decided not to start a PhD, but you want to apply to a research assistant or lab tech position in the US, you gonna have a different type of visa. This is a J1 visa. That's different from an F1. Can I work as a TA? Yes. Teaching assistant is a type of assistantship that the program you know, you may be awarded by the program while you are on an F1 visa. Just remember that the F1 visa is a student visa, so the only type of work that you can do is within the university. So the teaching assistantship is fine, the research assistantship, because it's managed through the department, is actually give you the stipend, and you usually have waived the majority of your tuition. So yes. And depending of your department, you can ask if you're eligible to do any extra extra activities within the university, not outside, because it's illegal. It's not you know the type of visa does not allow you to work outside university. And I cover the scholarship. So for the visa, yes. So I apply right after my master degree when I was in Italy. Um, mm, I mean, in my case, it's actually an strange case, I would say, because when I was applying for a job, I didn't find anything in Italy, but I actually found this position in the US, in Georgia. Um, I would say that if you have a master degree beside your bachelor's degree, you're already like in a very good position, because the majority of lab tech or research assistant position in the US, they only required a bachelor's degree. So if you already have a master degree and you have some lab experience, I would say you're in a very good position to apply. And then of course it depends on the type of job. If you already experience on the technique that they are advertised in the position, you might have a good chance as well. University, usually is in the job application, whether the position is for international student or US only. In that case, if it's open to international student, they will mention that they will sponsor your visa, and is usually a J1 visa if you join as a tech in the US. Let me see. Scholarship and stipend. Uh, it depends on the type of scholarship, I would say. In my case, when I was a student in Georgia, everybody received a stipend. And as a teaching assistant, I had, I would say, the 90% of tuition waived by the department. So I still had to pay, a little bit of tuition and fees which are mandatories, but in the way the assistantship worked in my program was just like the waiver of the majority of tuition for international student. Now, if you're able to get an additional scholarship, you apply to, I don't know, a grant from your country. It may be, a plus to your stipend. So it really depends on the type of scholarship that you have. Okay. And feel free to type uh, or if you're brave enough, you can just talk to us, and whatever question you have, or uh, um, we still have time. Okay. How did you find the research assistant position that you got? Did you apply to many? Yes. I found it on Nature Job, which is the website that I listed on the last slide of my presentation, on the slide when I was talking about the research assistant position. Another website that I also listed is called Euraxis, and those websites are very useful because they have a list of uh, scientific job, like job in research universities mainly, and they go from research assistant to postdoc, professor, research scientist, and there's also good because you can choose the country where you want to apply to. You can add different filters also regarding the type of research that you like, if you want to work on neuroscience or cancer. So they're very, very easy and they're very user-friendly. At that time, I was applying to a lot of position because I just graduated and I couldn't find any job in Italy. I graduated right after uh, the PhD application closed in my university, but I also knew that I didn't want to stay in Italy and do a PhD there for the way that it works that is different from the US. So yes, once you have a statement and a CV, it's gonna take time, and you know, yeah, so it takes time, just as finding a PhD. And yeah, don't be discouraged if people say no. You receive usually the first feedback that you receive are the negative ones. So just keep applying and be consistent and keep applying. Um, okay, so what are some advantages applying as an international student that could be mentioned in the application? And the same question related to disadvantages, and how did you manage them? Um, I would say, each person and each applicant, whether they're American or international, they have their personal story and, their personal reason. So, if it's, if you, for example, grew up in a small town, in a different country, or um, I don't know, if it's something that probably the country you're from doesn't have a lot of resources for STEM or science. Um, for example, um, there's something you may mention. But it's I don't think schools really look at whether you're US or international, as long as what you write on your statement um is true, and just reflect why, something that happened to you and something that, for example, help you understand that you wanted to do research or a PhD. Um, so I wouldn't really, see it like as a disadvantage. The only not really disadvantage, but you just need to be aware that some program may have a limited number of seats for international student. That's the only thing that um, I would probably just consider. And yeah, but and you need the more paperwork because you need the visa, you need the English test as well. Uh, yeah. Then, can you apply for RA or TA position with a bachelor's degree? Now, yes, in terms of job, it depends also on the job posts that you will find online. So for certain type of research assistant or lab tech position, only the bachelor's degree is required. So if, unless otherwise stated in the job application, you can apply, sure. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Yes, Sarah mentioned in the chat the website I was talking about. One is Euraxis, and the other is Nature Careers or Nature Jobs. And yeah, if you have more questions, feel free to type them in the chat or just ask them. Okay, we got another question. Do you have to include your financial background in the motivation letter when applying for scholarship? Um, what do you mean by financial background? When
Maybe like
applying for
you have
school?
to
Yeah.
justify if why
Oh,
you need a scholarship.
uh, but if you're applying to I mean, depends on the program. If you're applying to a program that um, already give, the scholarship to all the PhD student, you don't really have to mention that. Um, I would say for scholarship, I'm not sure if it's for like a private scholarship. For that, I would look into the guidelines of a specific scholarship and just look if they ask, there is like a specific question and they ask you to include any financial background. But if it's just for applying for, a program and um, the program, will provide you the scholarship, you don't have to. Yeah.
There is plenty of time for additional questions, but if you have to go or you think of questions later, I'm just putting the project short email in the chat. You can feel free to reach out to this email, and we can answer your question or direct you to someone who's able to help. Okay, maybe, oh, we have another question.
Nice. Okay, well, were all your interviews conducted virtually? No, they were actually in person, but I applied in 2017, so it was before COVID. Um, and I also I lived in the same state, so I did the interviews for two universities that were in Georgia, and at that time I was already working in Georgia, so I was already in that state. So I would say if you're in the US, they usually may ask you to come in person, at least before COVID. Now, I don't know if university right now still um, want you to just do a virtual interview. Um, but if you're not in the US, for sure it's gonna be a virtual interview. But if you're in the US and you have the chance, I would advise you to go in person because of course they will refund you the expenses, and this is gonna be a very good opportunity for you to, see the campus, see the city, and talk to the student as well, right? Okay.
I can also chime in because I helped with
Mhm.
interviews this year. So I go to University of California, San Diego, and the way our interviews work is if you are living outside of the US, the school will have you interview online because they're not going to pay for you to fly into the US. But if you're already in the States, they will cover the cost of your flight to come to the university. But that's just my specific school. Every school is gonna be on a case by case basis. But as Maria said, if there is an opportunity for you to come in person and um, you're able to financially do it, I would highly suggest that over Zoom. All right, maybe if there's no more questions, we can wrap up. Um, like I said, if you think of any last minute questions, feel free to email the project short email. Yes, the recording will be shared. The slides will also be shared. And we're posting all of our recordings to the new Project Short YouTube account. So I'm just dropping that in the chat. You can find our past recording on um, uh, writing resumes, and we'll also be posting our latest one from last week about writing personal statements. So hopefully these will be good resources for you all as you're preparing your application. So thank you so much.
Thank